On this episode of Shareable Science Beyond the Blog, we'll answer common viewer questions related to the COVID-19 vaccines. Welcome to Shareable Science. Science you can share. So we're going to begin a 4-part series on common questions that I'm asked about the COVID-19 vaccines. And we're going to start with some general questions, and then in future episodes, we'll dig deeper. So our first, does warp speed, as in Operation Warp Speed, mean the studies were rushed or the safety trials were skipped? The answer to that question is no. Vaccines are one of the most heavily studied medications, and the bar is set high for vaccine approval and for emergency use authorization. Operation Warp Speed primarily refers to how we produce large amounts of the vaccine rather than waiting for approval, and how we distribute that. So how do we make sure we have enough vaccine and all of the vials and syringes and needles and alcohol wipes, everything that is needed to administer that vaccine? And then how do we distribute that around the country rapidly and safely? The phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3 clinical trials that we've been talking about proceeded as you would expect. Now, in some cases, they were able to run pieces of them in parallel, and certainly enormous numbers of people worked long hours to make sure that the reporting was delivered to the FDA as soon as possible, and then within the FDA, that they reviewed the evidence and turned it around quickly. That's kind of like when the boss says, I need this report on my desk by Friday, and you clear everything out of the way to make it a priority. But that said, we have no evidence, we have no reason to believe that any of the safety steps or any of the key regulatory components were skipped over or were accelerated. Next question. Does the vaccine guarantee that I won't get COVID-19? No. The vaccines that we currently have phase 3 clinical trial data on show that it has more than 95% efficacy. In other words, a huge percentage of the people that get the vaccine are protected from getting sick from COVID-19. But it's not 100%. So there's a small slice of the population that could get the vaccine and then still have symptoms of COVID. Most researchers believe that those would be mild cases, but again, it's not a 100% guarantee. And then here's the flip side. Will taking this vaccine actually give me COVID-19? So historically, vaccines were weakened versions of the virus that generated a milder response. The vaccines that have made it through clinical trials and are in phase 3 clinical trials in the United States are not those vaccines. So what we currently are looking at is not going to give you COVID-19. Next question, are all COVID-19 vaccines the same? This is a really important point. The answer is no. There are dozens of vaccine candidates currently in clinical trials, and there are about 6 different categories of how those vaccines are developed and how they work. If you want to dig deeper into that, I would refer you to our July 27th Shareable Science Beyond the Blog video, where we lay out those broad categories and some of the key candidates in each category. If I have the vaccine, will I have a positive COVID test? The answer to that question is no. Getting the vaccine does not give you a positive test. Now, there's one important exception to this, and that's if you get the vaccine and then just a few days after that, or even a few days before the vaccine, you're exposed to the virus. It takes several days, a couple weeks even, for the vaccine to prime your body to begin building immunity and to start giving you protection. So before that protection arrives, if you've been exposed, you could get sick. That's not the vaccine's fault. It's because you got exposed before the vaccine was able to provide you with protection. And then our last question, how many doses are in the vaccine? So this varies based on type of vaccine, but in general, most of these vaccines have 2 doses. An initial dose that sort of begins to prime your immune system, and then a second dose, maybe 3 or 4 weeks after that, that really bolsters your immunity. Now, there are some vaccine candidates that may only be one dose. We'll wait and see what those clinical results tell us. But in general, you're probably looking at 2 doses somewhere in the neighborhood of 3 to 4 weeks apart. Okay, so that's our first set of questions. In future episodes, we're going to dig deeper into information about safety and efficacy and the categories of people that have gone through clinical trials. So stay tuned for those. If you know someone who you think would find this useful, please share this video with them. Thank you for watching, and I look forward to seeing you on our next episode of Shareable Science Beyond the Blog. Take care.